Good morning, folks. Welcome back. This is Chris in Port Elizabeth in the Eastern Cape on this lovely Sunday morning, July 26th, 2026. Listen, I've been wondering where Kyle Cowan has been going. He's done some great investigative journalism for News24, one of the few people that actually does work there. And now I know. He, like his bosses, Adrian Basson and Peter Toit and George Classen, is obsessed with AfriForum, the civil rights group. So much so that they've dedicated time, wasting their time, bringing you a story that's publicly available, that you could have largely found out all by your lonesome. Easy to find the information that they're looking for. It's not that hard. But they've really gone out on a hit job to attack AfriForum to let you know just what kind of organization they are. News24, a propaganda outlet, the tabloid of record, News24, which consistently lies and has a policy that violates fact. The policy, the written policy, which they've revealed in a request to Ronaldo Khos, is that the refugee program for South Africans is a white Afrikaner farmer program. That is their position. They're sticking to it, despite the fact that that's a complete boulder national lie. This might be one of the reasons why this organization is losing billions of rand, because people are tired of being lied to. So they sicked Kyle Cowan on AfriForum. Why? Has AfriForum committed any crimes? No. Has AfriForum committed any egregious social offenses? No. Has AfriForum done anything other than perform the responsibilities that it claims to for its members and the greater society as a whole, as a civil rights organization? No, it hasn't. There's no claim of fraud, no claim of misrepresentation, no claim of anything. They just think that they're clever because they got information you could have gotten either from the Department of Social Development through a request as a nonprofit organization, or the company's Intellectual Property Commission, CPIC. You could also have gotten there, or you could have simply asked AfriForum. Now, I wouldn't blame AfriForum for not giving information to a propaganda outlet, the tabloid of record. I just wouldn't do that. That's not a smart move. And apparently they didn't do that. They didn't cooperate with this nonsensical story. But Kyle Cowan's story is Inside AfriForum's Money Machine, how lobby groups splurge on salaries and marketing. I don't want to play whataboutism, but let's play it anyway. Have we seen this sort of investigative journalism into the finances of the African National Congress, a party that was bankrupt, that didn't pay its party planner for a few years and was taken to court? It was so embarrassing for the African National Congress that the sheriff of the High Court went to Latuli House and inventoried their items for confiscation and public auction. That's how bad it was. Then Naledi Pandor mysteriously went to Tehran, and suddenly the ANC, after years of ignoring this debt and accruing over 40, almost 50 million rand in interest and penalties, paid off 102 million rand. Isn't that a magical situation? And days after that, they held their 112th birthday celebration in Nelspruit, where they spent another 20 million rand at least. On top of that, they ran a national election campaign, and they spent hundreds of millions of rand for that. Now, where is this investigative journalism on something that actually matters, that is questionable, and may have a legal, a moral, and a criminal aspect to it, like the financing of the African National Congress? Or frankly, how about other political parties? Why don't we look at their financing? Well, occasionally they do report on that, so let's be fair. But they've never gone deep. No one has ever made the effort in this country, as investigative journalists that I've seen, if they have, I'll stand corrected on the record, made the effort to tie where the money came from. There's not been any official audits here. In fact, the government of South Africa under Cyril Ramaphosa tried to cover up political spending and increase it to create dark money for financing. But no, we're going to take our energy for a failing tabloid of record, News24, and dedicate it to focusing on investigation on AfriForum. So what does this so-called investigative journalism reveal? Well, it reveals that AfriForum has highly paid directors. Well, that's terrible, huh? The government of South Africa has highly paid directors, but it fails to perform. News24 has highly paid journalists and editors, but it really loses money. So the people that run are paid a significant, healthy salary. And are its members upset about that? The effort here is to turn its membership against AfriForum. This isn't a story. This is a hit piece, a propaganda piece. And again, as I said, they are a welcome reporter of these things, but they're getting this wrong, completely wrong. They say that they spent more than 910 million on salaries and marketing alone, according to their annual financial reports between 2019 and 2024. These were obtained by News24. In contrast, they claim they spent only 304 million of the money on direct project delivery costs, like fixing potholes. This entails the various projects AfriForum sells to its members as creating a bulwark against state failure and establishing Afrikaner cultural autonomy. I see nothing here about the litigation AfriForum does on behalf of all South Africans against things like confiscating one's property immorally and illegally in violation of Section 25 of the Constitution. I see nothing here about all the legal cases it brings to protect individual South African interests. I see nothing done here for the support it gives to families. Why? Because they don't care to tell you. So whether they spend 60% on salaries and overhead, or they spend 80%, that isn't germane. It's important, it's useful information to know. But are they delivering the services they claim to deliver and that its membership wants? I would argue they are. The Neighborhood Watch Project, on which it spent $13.4 million between 2019 and 2024, or 75,832 rand for each of its 177 neighborhood and farm watches over the period. Do they realize that most of the effort for that is spent voluntarily by members who donate their time, their own petrol? Volunteers who go out and patrol neighborhoods because the police don't do it? You can't buy that kind of security. You can't buy that kind of peace of mind. And by the way, before News24 starts its nonsense, I know for a fact that they patrol all neighborhoods, including townships. I've ridden with AfriForum's Neighborhood Watch in Zeerust, and we patrolled black townships and Indian townships. Now, they also go on about AfriForum losing membership or its membership declining or not growing. Well, since AfriForum is portrayed by the media as something only for Afrikaners and its efforts to help other South Africans, particularly black South African tribal groups with their civil rights issues, it's small wonder that AfriForum's overwhelming membership is Afrikaners. And yes, they were formed to deal with the interest of Afrikaners. The Afrikaner population is not increasing. Are they supposed to increase their membership till every single Afrikaner, male, female, adult, minor, child is a member? It's ridiculous. South Africa's black population continues to increase. Its illegal immigrant population continues to increase despite the domestic terrorism of vigilantes like that are running around the country now attacking foreign nationals, legal and illegal. It's a static and declining population. It's hardly surprising that after reaching a zenith, AfriForum's membership would plateau. That's not exactly rocket science or news or investigative journalism. It's simply common sense. So Cowan goes to mention the point. The video doesn't mention that the questions were, or the video was a result of News24's prompting. All right, well, when I finish my investigative journalism report into the finances and the backing and the undue influence of other actors on News24, I'll be sure to tell you that they didn't answer my questions out of bitterness. So he runs financials from 2019 to 2024. What he doesn't tell you is the history of AfriForum across the board. Why don't we start in 2005 or 2006 when AfriForum was founded and see how rapidly it grew from publicly available information? No, we're going to focus on the COVID era. The COVID era. We're going to focus on this area when South Africa's economy has essentially, in effect, collapsed and has shrunk. We're going to focus on a shrinking South Africa as a time period to talk about the success or failure of gaining members of a nonprofit. How many members has the Catholic Church gained in this time? How many members have the initiation groups for the Xhosa gained in this time? How many viewers has News24 gained this time? Yeah, I know that's whataboutism, but what I'm getting at is this is a nothing burger. If you want this information, it's publicly available. And this analysis is not particularly enlightening. Not particularly enlightening, folks. Now, the reason he goes after AfriForum is because that's the mission of News24. It's not news reporting. It's propaganda and sensationalism. We see it every day. Their stated policy on the refugee program is for white Afrikaners, which we know is absolute balderdash, a complete lie. They claim to be a news organization, yet they run lies. They have a stated policy position on what their journalists are allowed to write about the refugee program. Lies. We've proven they're lies. It's not for Afrikaners. It's not for farmers. Cowan says that this has proven to be lucrative for AfriForum, their financial situation. And their strength has enabled them to exploit wedge issues ranging from property rights to language and education rights and foreign relations. Exploit issues, really, by bringing them to the public's attention. What does News24 do on a daily basis? What did they do in the Oval Office? Did they claim that the South African delegation was ambushed by Donald Trump? I seem to recall that being the case. They weren't ambushed. They begged for the meeting. They went there. And South African media lied about the event. When Donald Trump was asked a question by a prominent South African reporter, Annika Larsen, Mr. President, do you still believe in the white genocide story from South Africa now that President Ramaphosa has been here? Did News24 accurately or honestly report what Donald Trump's statement was in response to that set-up question? No. Did any South African media outlet report on that? No. What Donald Trump said in response, and you can go watch the tape, when Annika Larsen asked him if he still believed in the white genocide narrative now that Ramaphosa has come to the White House, Trump says, I'm not convinced of that. So why didn't South African media, including News24, quote Donald Trump when he said he wasn't convinced of the narrative that the media has been pushing about white genocide? Completely looked it over. They talk every day and claim that Donald Trump is lying about the situation in South Africa. That's what News24 does. How about an investigative report into News24 and why it violates the truth? That's what I'd like to see. The single largest expenditure item was for salaries and other employee-related costs, approximately $589 million between 2019 and 2024. Yeah? Listen, as a federal employee serving in the U.S. military, we have something called the CFC, Combined Federal Campaign. That is an annual effort by registered nonprofits to raise money because it's illegal for them to go to government locations and solicit or elicit donations from government employees, including military. So the government facilitates that by creating a program called CFC. All these agencies, whether it's Catholic Relief Services, or it's Lutheran Church Services, or it's Leukemia Society, or the Cancer Society, whatever it is, muscular dystrophy, all of them, and even small things for tribal interests, they get registered with CFC. They disclose information. You get a book, you can look at it. As someone who wants to donate, you can see exactly what their money is spent on. I typically gave money to the American Cancer Society and the Sickle Cell Society organization and others when I was in the military. Every year. It comes right out of your pay. You don't do anything. You fill a form out, directly debited from your account. I mention this because it was public available information that they brought together to show you what nonprofits spend on overhead. In the case of AfriForum, they have to spend a lot of money on legal cases, a lot on behalf of South Africans. That's overhead. They also spend a lot of money on salaries for people who work there. And that's hardly surprising. Take a look at how much money the American Cancer Society spends overhead and others. I'm just picking that one out of the hat. Just go take a look. It's not unusual for a nonprofit to spend 40 to 70% of their donations on overhead costs. It's not unusual, at least in America. I can't account for South Africa. But the bottom line here is that this is reprehensible, this sort of nonsense. This is a hit job piece by News24, and they sick their one investigative journalist who would be better spent investigating how the Western Cape High Court came to the conclusion that it is superior to the Constitutional Court. That would be an investigative journalism report that I think most of us would like to see. So how about News24 focus on the issues at hand for South Africa and save this information for the societal pages? They're welcome to investigate AfriForum. It's a matter of publicly available information. And the fact that Kyle Cowan is a little bumhurt because AfriForum won't answer his questions, which he can then use to twist to try to hang AfriForum, is hardly surprising. Well, this is a longer report than normal, folks, but I woke up to this in Port Elizabeth this morning, and as usual, News24 is just annoying. No focus on the news, just on sensationalism. AfriForum spends a lot of money on overhead. Shocker! Not really. That's just how things work. You can be a member of it, you don't have to be a member of it. But don't fall for hit jobs. Don't be shocked and gasp when you discover that they spend a lot of money on overhead. It's hardly surprising if you understand how corporations and nonprofit organizations work. It's a not-for-profit, folks. What say you, South Africa, Mzansi? Cheers.